In today's episode of the Pathmark Presents podcast, I have a very interesting guest here with me today. I'm with the director of Demand Generation, Jessica Capibaribe. So there you go. Just still learning the pronunciation perfectly. And she's heading up KloudSpot in terms of their demand generation. And KloudSpot, just to keep that brief, is a situational awareness and intelligence platform. And there's a whole lot more than just having that brief summary of what it is. And the goal would be to figure out today for us, what does KloudSpot do, who is it serving, and also how's Jessica thinking about growth for the platform. So Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very good. Yeah. So maybe give us an overview, right? Like a quick 360 overview of what KloudSpot actually is.
Sure. So as you said, KloudSpot is the first situational awareness and intelligence platform that uses AI to spot opportunities for a better, more connected experience for end users inside of any perimeter. So I like to give an example. Let's say you're a shopper who's headed to the mall or a city's downtown shopping district for a job interview outfit. And maybe last night you were browsing on your mobile device, at a store nearby. Well, now that you've arrived at this, shopping district, you might opt into their free Wi-Fi because why not? And based on that data that the sensors inside that perimeter can read, our technology really enables the data capture so that we can find that information and say, oh, this is a person who is looking for a pair of shoes at a store nearby. Here's a discount code for them, and maybe offer that up on a digital display or even on their mobile device for them. So now you've created a happy shopper experience, right? Something personalized to who they are. It might not even be based on browsing data. It could be based on their demographic information or even their mood data that we can read as well with our technology. So if you also think about, today's world, this sort of post-COVID life that we're all living in, so many organizations are looking to KloudSpot to help them reopen and stay open. And one of the ways we're able to do that is use our technology to enable data capture from sources that can provide information like mass detection on site at an office, or body temperature scanning, heat maps so that you can navigate routes through buildings with minimal exposure to other people, and one-click contact tracing. So if you think about it, employees will come back to work when they feel safe, and data is what is going to convince them, not necessarily just sort of an encouraging letter or words from a CEO, for example. So we also recently launched a product called Cloud Hybrid, which is a SaaS application for companies that are juggling the need for a flexible working environment. Employees, a lot of them want some days in the office and some days at home. Whatever you need, Cloud Hybrid provides that consistent experience from anywhere. So we provide data on occupancy rates, productivity metrics, contact tracing, 360-degree virtual mapping where you can walk through your office and feel like you're there again. What's really exciting about Cloud Hybrid for me is that it helps mitigate that feeling of isolation, that drain from, that Zoom fatigue, as people call it. Humans are social, we crave interaction. So it's exciting for me, both personally and as a marketer for KloudSpot, that we're focusing there.
Super interesting. There seems to be quite a broad range of different use cases where KloudSpot can be helpful. Like, who would be the typical types of companies? Like, what types of companies actually would go ahead and leverage your technology?
Yeah, you're right. It's really the end user. It could be for any perimeter, right? So we're often talking to CIOs, IT directors. We're talking about providing business impact on things like employee productivity metrics, capacity insights, and just a happier, more engaged workforce. That's often the sort of enterprise organization that's interested in that, right? Because if you think about having a happy, engaged workforce, you're talking about people who you're lowering your attrition rates. We all know it's way more difficult to recruit new talent than to retain the talent you have. and a more personalized, connected experience for people in, let's say, the retail space or hospitality, sports and entertainment venues, really putting an emphasis on that personalized and connected, fan experience, for example.
Yeah, super interesting. With that spectrum of even personas, as you were describing, or people, who discover the service for them, like, how do you think about sort of the journey of somebody learning about CloudSpot and getting started? Like, maybe you could tell us about the acquisition channels or the steps that, somebody would typically walk through in order to get to know you guys and then getting started.
Yeah. Well, we recently launched a new website for a lot of this reason, right? We were thinking about how people find the information about us, and we wanted to make sure that it was clear there was a journey for you on our properties, no matter what industry you're in. And we were able to do that by just sort of reorganizing the information on our website and then really focusing on content, right? So we've created an ebook specifically for our smart cities solution, and we are syndicating that in what we like to call watering holes, places where people who are buying smart cities solutions are spending time and engaging. So maybe it's at a virtual conference that we were at, about a month ago, doing just that and meeting people and sharing with them some of the great case study information we have from the city of Erie and how we were able to, bring a connected experience to their citizens. So we're sort of using our content, creating it, but also making sure it's syndicated out into the different channels where people are really spending their time, right? Because we don't necessarily have that level of brand awareness yet as CloudSpot, but if we can go out and find those channels where people are, then our content is much more effective that way.
Makes a whole lot of sense. You brought up the website there real brief. Like, what role do you attribute as a marketer to the website? Is it a vehicle of information? Is it a vehicle for conversion? Like, how do you think about it?
It's funny you asked the question, because it's something that we're talking about a lot internally right now. I think we always think about it as a conversion opportunity, for sure. And that's when we were building the site, we were thinking that way. How do we sort of reduce our bounce rate? How do we give people, reasons to stay on the site longer, to serve them up another piece of content? And here's something else you might be interested in. And, being able to sort of follow them on the path, no matter where they're at. And the other thing we've been talking about more recently is doing things like ungating assets that we would normally have gated, for the purpose of, people are sometimes, a little hesitant to fill out a form in order to read, an ebook or, watch a video. And so we're really testing that, hey, what happens if we take away the gates here, right? And are we going to see that boost in engagement? Are we going to see more sharing of our content? Because it's easy now for me to forward this to my boss or share this with my coworker and say, hey, you should look at this. That helps with brand awareness. So it's a delicate dance. I think we do a little bit of both, but we're definitely thinking about that full funnel journey all the time.
Very cool. Typically, the folks that we have on the show, they're super critical with their own pages. It's kind of like this concept of the ever evolving, organism, essentially, really, of the website. It keeps on emerging. Like, where do you see the biggest room for improvement, or where do you see the page sort of like moving towards to?
Yeah, I still think content is queen, as they say. I think that, you cannot beat a really thoughtful, SEO program. Personally, I think that, it takes time, and it's something that as marketers, we don't always have a lot of patience. I think we want to see results, every week, like where are the new leads. And I think that that's fine to have some short-term goals, but I think we have to do a lot of internal education too, for leadership and other folks who are not as familiar with, the length of time it takes to really build out the content that's going to put you on the map, and that's going to allow people to understand that, oh, this company provides me with quality content and information that really helps me and helps me to make a decision about something that I need for my business. So I'm going to come back to them, right? So even though we don't necessarily have that name recognition yet, if we continue building out quality content, then we'll find success in the long run.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's switch gears a little bit, right? I would love to talk with you a little bit more sort of your generic perspective on marketing and demand generation. In your role, what would you consider is the challenge, and not just your role, but in marketing per se, in your perspective, is the challenge when bringing in innovation in marketing?
Yeah, well, I think when you're in an in-house role, I'll back up and say I spent a lot of time at an agency. I had the fortune of working for Edelman, which is a very large PR and marketing firm, for 7 years. And what's beautiful about the agency experience is that you are being brought on to solve a problem or a need. And it's very clear, not always, but it's often very clear at least what the desired outcome is, or what the path and the journey is going to be to get there. For being in-house, it's really on you to kind of use your skill and also your persuasion skills, your internal, for those internal conversations, to say, this is the direction we need to take, our marketing efforts, and here's why. So it's a really, it's a bit of a different beast when you get in-house. And so I think the challenges become, educating people on how marketing works, how long it really takes to make real impact sometimes on things like brand awareness, sentiment, and educating internally folks on, what metrics matter, right? So often people just think, well, where are the leads? Let's talk about the quality of the leads. And we're not necessarily thinking about things like brand sentiment and, levels of engagement and, even bounce rate and time on site and some of those things that, as marketers, for us, we're thinking in those terms, but not necessarily folks outside of our department.
Yeah, super interesting. That actually brings me sort of to my next question, because you brought that up there. Where do you see for the challenge for marketing teams to communicate return on investment, right? Where how do you think about that?
I think it's different for every company, and also the scale and the size of the company too, right? So at a company like KloudSpot, we are still, in a really early stage, and we like to say small but mighty team, and we're growing, but day to day we see impacts of marketing efforts on the business. I mean, there is an impact whether I get that blog post out this week or not, whether I get those social posts up and out this week, that email, because it immediately drives a spike to our channel, to traffic to our site, engagement, conversation on social media. So I think that's the way that I think about it here for KloudSpot, is that I've never felt the more immediate impact of my role than I do here. So it makes me feel very fulfilled, I would say.
Very cool. And last question, maybe sort of on that sort of more generic perspective on marketing, where do you see the challenges for conversion rate optimization? We spoke a bit about the website, right? We generally talk a lot about websites in the Pathman Presents podcast. Where do you see the challenge for conversion optimization?
Yeah. Our challenges, I would say we've had challenges around determining intent, determining budget capacity, even for people who come into the site. And one of the ways we were actually able to help with this, we developed a tool called the Reopening Readiness Assessment Tool last fall. And it's essentially like a very short quiz, very interactive. It's pretty fun actually to take the quiz online. It's mobile optimized as well. And the purpose of it is to place the user into a phase of reopening. So, phase one, meaning you have a little bit more work to do to be ready to reopen, kind of post-COVID. Phase 4, hey, you're doing great, maybe just think about optimizing these three areas, for example. But what we did was, inside of that quiz, we put some of those intent questions in there, as well as budget. Do you have budget secured for additional support? So by the time that person or user would get to the first sales meeting, we already have that information, so we know where they're at. And that's been a great help and an excellent tool for us.
Super interesting. Let's switch gears a little bit, right, and talk about you as a leader in the company, your own journey, right? As you mentioned, content is key, and so there is a lot of marketing content out there at the moment. Like, how do you pick and choose what you consume yourself? How do you filter for marketing content that you consider worth your time investment?
Yeah, I think a lot about ways I can be more efficient while, with my time, but still staying in that learning mode. So for me, it's podcasts. I will have one on while I'm making breakfast in the morning, while I'm taking my walk, whatever it is. On sort of those times where your brain isn't necessarily being used in another way. So I like to consume in that way, or audiobooks, times like that, finding some quiet time on the weekend to read for 30 minutes or an hour, that helps me too.
Very cool. Since we're slowly coming to an end of the interview, I would love to jump into our rapid fire questions. It's a couple of short and crisp questions to get to know you and the company a little bit better.
Okay, great. Let's do it.
What is the last book that you read?
Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Cool. What's one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
Well, we have some internal metrics that we're talking about at the moment that I won't necessarily share, but definitely cloud hybrid, the flexible working environments of the future.
If there would be no boundaries in technology, what's the one thing that you want to have fixed for your role today?
For my role, I would clone myself and up our content development by 10x.
What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
Kept me awake at night. I would just say what drives me and what gets me just excited to get up in the morning is the fact that we're helping so many organizations reopen after this very challenging year and a half we've all had. That to me is extremely fulfilling and exciting. So maybe keeping me awake in a good way.
Mm-hmm. And the very last question would be, right, if today would be your very first day, going into Cloud Lead's office, you're starting today, what's one advice that you would give yourself?
I would say I would give myself the freedom to, in addition to making to-do lists, making to not do lists. So that's really all about making sure, holding the team accountable to, focusing on priorities and not getting too distracted, even though, because at a startup, everything is, important. Everything's priority. It all needs to get done. But keeping everybody focused on, what we're going to do this week and what we're not going to focus on to get distracted.
Very good. I like that, because people keep on filling their to-do lists and not to-do lists. I like it. Very cool. Awesome, Jessica. I really appreciate, right, that you took the time with us today and, talk a little bit about CloudSpot and share your thoughts on growth as well. I want to give you sort of the last word, right? If somebody would be forgetting everything that we discussed about CloudSpot, what's one thing they should remember about the company?
Yeah. I would say if you are a CIO, a school executive, a business owner, and you are looking to reopen and stay open as an organization, come talk to us. Find us at cloudspot.com. We're helping businesses every day, and it's the most exciting and fulfilling work, but I'm sure there are others out there that could use our help. So come find us at cloudspot.com.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Platform Presents.
Thank you.